Good morning. Hey guys. Hey Jason, good to see you. Always great to see you and Susan and Deb. These are the mods. Ask them any questions. I probably should have them on speed dial or something. I'm so sorry. Again, no tech problems today, I promise. I'm going to keep it simple. What I'm going to do is I am going to make sure that when I switch over to a video clip, that the sound is good. I know the mic I'm using now has never had any problems. So let's do this. Okay. We have 50 days. Maybe it's 49, but I'm just rounding to yesterday's number. We have 50 days until November 5th. And as you know, early voting is beginning in person on September 20th. And yes, I know ballots have been sent out in other states, but I'm talking about in-person early voting. And people are going to be headed to the polls this week. Yes, people are casting their votes, and this is the time. This is a time to represent what we value. And although I'm not a member of the Kamala Harris campaign, and neither are you, I can tell you how we can win. I used the thumbnail I created today was obviously I took a picture of another president. In this case, it was I did a clip of a photo of Barack Obama on the phone in the White House, and then I took an image of Kamala Harris and sat her right there with a big smile on her face. Can you visualize this? Can you visualize our first woman president sitting right there at the Resolute desk, doing the people's business, representing the people, right? We do not need an adjudicated rapist, inveterate con artist, and grifter. And yes, we will be talking about his latest crypto scam today. We don't need him in the White House. The person that we need is Kamala Harris. And we can do this. And the way to do it is not to fight with the MAGAs, not to try to convince someone of a position that they hold is wrong if they are just trying to bait you into a conversation. That is wasting your time. If someone is obviously hostile and is anyone who's throwing some stuff at you that's totally outrageous and they are not persuadable, you don't always know if they're not persuadable, but you can usually tell by them shouting at you. What you can say is, hey, you be you and just move on. There are other people, though, who, and I've seen this on Twitter, where someone said something to me in response to a comment I made. And instead of being hostile or just saying you be you, I asked further questions of him. And it turns out that he was actually not informed about something, right? And that can happen to you and I, too. But right now, I know enough. Now I'm going to do enough. I know who my candidate is. And I also know that most people I know have decided, and their issue is making sure that they are still registered, making sure they know where the voting booth is, and because these precincts can change. And for those people who need to either mail in their votes or vote early because, life is unpredictable, this might be the time to work on that. But beyond that, enthusiasm is key. And also for the undecided voters, and there are, or for people who aren't fully motivated to vote because they don't really believe that they have power individually when they really do, or they don't see how their vote matters. Really, the best way to do this is follow the money. Who here is trying to get back in the Oval Office to enrich themselves further? Who has his entire adult life been the kind of businessman who's only in it for himself? And when he is let's remember, when he is a businessman in the White House, how did he do? These are the kinds of things to remind people. But at the end of the day, how we win is to tell people that Donald Trump's plan to cut taxes actually would cost, supposedly, cut taxes and impose a tariff on goods would cost most Americans on average $3,900 a year, nearly $4,000, some more. You might be the people who would be more. If you are more than average in terms of income in your family and you spend more money, it's going to be more than $3,900 a year. For you, it could be substantially more, but that is the average number. Donald Trump is promising to increase what you pay on groceries by imposing a tax that will pass through to you on goods that you buy right here in America, whether or not they were made abroad, because those could be products that are made here with imported parts, or they could just be American manufacturers and American, it's not manufacturers, but the manufacturers or the retailers raising prices because they see the opportunity to gouge us, or because they know the competition has had to raise their prices. And it's not evil that they do this, that the way corporations are structured for the most part, and I'm talking about business corporations, for the most part, and this is what I teach, and I just be clear, it's a fact that corporations are structured to enrich their shareholders. And a lot of us happen to also be, shareholders through our 401ks and so on, right? But the way that corporations work, and this happened after COVID, right? When these corporations were given money to spend, a lot of them instead just bought stock back from their shareholders, gave them cash. Others raised dividends to shareholders. It's not always in corporations' best interest, if they have a lot of cash on hand, to invest it in growing the firm. And they're not interested necessarily in raising wages unless they really have a strong union presence to be a counterbalance, right? Now, you may say to me, and I promise you to how we win, but this is the money talk here. Donald Trump is not pro-union. He is pro-Donald Trump and pro the billionaires who have supported him, for whom he already gave tax cuts. He's not for us. Now, let's get back to what the heck is going on right now and why I am so on this topic. Now, before we get to the money situation, I need to talk again about what is going on in Springfield, Ohio. And as you know, thanks to J.D. Vance deciding he was going to believe some random stories that were incredibly racist and unbelievable, non-credible, from people in Springfield, Ohio, there is now violent threats against the schools and the hospitals and businesses there. I heard yesterday that, I don't know if it's permanently, that some or maybe all the schools in Springfield, Ohio, are having to have students go remote for learning because they keep having to respond to bomb threats. I think there have been at least 33 bomb threats called in, none credible, into Springfield, Ohio. And we can absolutely blame Donald Trump and Laura Loomer and J.D. Vance and everyone who keeps directing hatred toward Haitian immigrants who are living their best life until now, and who in the community of people who are not recent immigrants, who are integrated, not that it should matter, but like I'm saying, they were welcomed by the community. They came into Springfield because this was the whole plan. This is what I thought conservative wanted. Bring back jobs to America, rebuild the factories. And so businesses were being rebuilt up in there, and people who have lived here for a long time in America did not want to take the jobs. And it turns out, just like my great-grandparents and also my grandparents, depending on what side of the family, when they came to America, they were looking for opportunity. That's what's happening here with Haitian immigrants here. Again, here lawfully. And again, as I always say, even if you have come here out of desperation to America and you are undocumented, you are still legally entitled to the protections of the U.S. Constitution and ethically entitled to the same human compassion that anyone else would get. Now, what is going on? I know that yesterday we played the video of J.D. Vance absolutely admitting that he had invented the story. And I want to, by invented, I mean created, was looking around, trolling around, fishing around for any kind of rumor, any kind of conspiracy theory, and he absolutely went with it. And I want to get this for you, and I thought that, I think I have it on here. Okay, great. So the deal is, J.D. Vance is kind of doubling down. He spoke with Kristen Welker on Meet the Press on Sunday. And I just have to play this with you because I don't think you're going to flipping believe what he said and did. Okay, let's listen.
Shift to another topic. I've been talking to allies of former President Trump who are frankly outraged. They're alarmed that Donald Trump has been traveling with Laura Loomer. She is someone who says she supports white nationalism. She spread conspiracy theories, including that the September 11th attacks are an inside job. She recently said that Kamala Harris, whose mother was Indian, if she wins in November, quote, the White House will smell like curry. Senator, you are married to an Indian American woman. What was your reaction to hearing those comments specifically?
Well, Kristen, I want to go back to what you said about Haitian migrants to begin with, because you didn't give me a chance to respond. Look, we don't blame the Haitian migrants for coming to Springfield. We blame Kamala Harris for opening the American southern border and inviting.
What? I just had to pause for a second. We don't blame Haitian immigrants from coming to Springfield. We blame Kamala Harris for opening the southern border. These things are not connected. That's like me saying, I don't blame myself for eating that bag of M&Ms. I blame Kamala Harris for opening up the southern border. What the fuck? Okay.
20,000 people to get dropped in a small Ohio town. Now, you asked about Laura Loomer. Look, Laura Loomer is not affiliated with the Trump campaign. She said something.
Okay. Dropped in an Ohio town. How flipping insulting. Invited to become part of a community in Ohio. This man is, it gets even worse. Just keep listening.
Border and inviting 20,000 people to get dropped in a small Ohio town. Now, you asked about Laura Loomer. Look, Laura Loomer is not affiliated with the Trump campaign. She said something about curry in the White House that I first read about this morning, actually, because I knew that you would ask me about it. Look, Kristen, I make a mean chicken curry. I don't think that it's insulting for anybody to talk about their dietary preferences or what they want to do in the White House. I think what Laura said about Kamala Harris is not what we should be focused on.
Okay. Kamala Harris did not make the comment and say what she was going to do in the White House. This wasn't about dietary preferences. Kamala Harris is an amazing chef and makes many dishes. And I, for one, also enjoy curry, especially when you actually use a mortar and pestle and grind the coriander seeds. It makes a huge difference. But that's not what he's talking about. And that's not what Laura Loomer was talking about. Let's keep going.
We should be focused on the policy and on the issues. And look, so yeah, do I agree with what Laura Loomer said about Kamala Harris? No, I don't. I also don't think that this is actually an issue of national import. Is Laura Loomer running for president? No. Kamala Harris is running for president. And whether you're eating curry at your dinner table or fried chicken.
Fried chicken. He might have as well have said watermelon or the N-word. This is how he does it. Also, someone in my notes in the chat said he doesn't make the chicken curry. Do you think, guys? And I want to know. Do you think he said he made the chicken curry because he didn't want to draw attention to the fact that his wife's parents are from India? I don't know. Let's keep going.
Things have gotten more expensive thanks to her policies. Let's talk about the person running for president of the United States, not a social media personality who supports Donald Trump.
Senator, were you and your wife offended? And do you disavow those comments that even some Trump allies say are blatantly racist?
Kristen, I just told you I don't like those comments, and I think that we ought to be focused on Kamala Harris's policy failures. I also don't look at the internet for every single thing to get offended by. I'm running for vice president because I think Kamala Harris has been a disaster.
That pause, when they said, were you and your wife offended? He paused because he couldn't tell the truth, which the answer is yes. But he couldn't say that. This is not someone who should be one step away from the White House. He is so ambitious that he would sell out his own wife. Sounds like Ted Cruz. Now, I can comment on this, obviously, but I'd love for you to hear Senator Elizabeth Warren discussing what JD Vance is all about. I haven't played any clips from her in a while. She was my law professor. I don't know if I've mentioned this here. I took bankruptcy law from her in law school, and then also had to. I was dropped in. I was dropped into a Senate Banking Committee hearing. I was invited to speak before the Senate Banking Committee, and I think there was also a House Financial Services Subcommittee in the summer of, I want to say 2016, relating to bank reform and the need to actually deal with the still too big to fail banks that were trying to load up their balance sheets with debt. And I was more prepared for that Senate hearing because I knew Warren was going to ask me questions, and I was ever prepared for any law school class because I'm terrified of her, and she's wonderful. Okay, but she is no nonsense. Let's play.
The American media totally ignored this stuff until Donald Trump and I started talking about cat memes. If I have to, create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do, Dana.
And I raise that because people are being terrorized in Springfield, Ohio. There are Haitians living, families living huddled in their homes. And he just said he's making up stories. This is a distraction, but it is having a huge real world consequence and impact.
So think about what he just said. He said he will lie to get attention. And once someone has said that, then you can't believe anything they say. He will lie to get attention. And if it hurts other people, if the consequences of that lie are to put people at risk, evidently, J.D. Vance just doesn't care because he is hopeful that it will advance Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and give them one more opportunity to win in this election. You know, I talk to people. We have a vibrant Haitian community in Massachusetts.
Third largest in the country, I think.
Yes, we do. And I've talked to people in our Haitian community. And I had a conversation on Saturday with one of my dear friends who was describing what it is like to have to tell little children whose parents are Haitian, who are growing up in America, and try to explain what's going on, what they're hearing in the news. Also, what it's like for seniors who have come here. They have fled times of great stress. They've tried to build secure lives here. And they watch something unfold like this kind of ugliness and hatred, fingering them, pointing them out. All a lie, but a lie that can do enormous damage. That's the kind of thing that tells you who people are. And for this one, once again, you think about the contrast. Who do J.D. Vance and Donald Trump fight for? Nobody but themselves. Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, they're out there fighting for all our families. Not a few, not a subset, but all our families.
And that, my friends, is how we win. If there is nothing else that we remember for the next 50 days, and even less, if there is only one message you wanted to commit, that whenever you spoke about them to any friend, you just repeated and you integrated into it, it is that Donald Trump is in it for himself. He's fighting for himself, to make himself richer, to keep himself out of jail, to fight to make himself feel like a big man when he is small. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are fighting for and represent all American families. They want all of us to prosper. Donald Trump doesn't care. Donald Trump is not fighting for anyone but himself. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are fighting for all of us. And as for J.D. Vance, I don't know what he's fighting for. He is a chameleon. Now, this is going to blow your mind if you haven't been paying attention to this. But a few days ago, Donald Trump made this announcement that I'm sure many of you may have missed because who pays attention to this crap? But let's play this. This was a couple days ago. Him announcing the big Twitter Spaces event that was going to happen last night.
The question I have for you, following up on what was asked.
Oh, shoot. Guys, I want to get the intro. Here we go.
Live on Twitter Spaces at 8 p.m. this September 16th for the launch of World Liberty Financial. We're embracing the future with crypto and leaving the slow and outdated big banks behind.
Yes, Donald Trump, and I know you probably heard this summer, is going to be involved in crypto and create his own crypto coin because this grift is still going. And if you think, what the hell is she saying? Why does she know anything about crypto? Just a couple things on my CV, yes. Before I went into teaching, I was an associate general counsel at Fidelity Investments. I was the head lawyer there for the fixed income funds. And no, we did not peddle in crypto. It wasn't around then. Now, separately from that, when I, last year for about 18 months, beginning in, I think it was 2022, all the way through early of 2020. Oh, I'm getting it wrong. Yeah, to early 2023 for over a year. I had a podcast, which you can still find, that I did with Politicon called Booked Up with Jen Taub. And I would every week literally read and prepare some questions, and then have an interview with some really amazing top tier authors. And over that period of time, there were 3 books on crypto that came out in short succession in the summer and fall of 2023. So yes, I did interview the very Michael Lewis, yes, on Going Infinite, his book, and that interview is still there. I also interviewed Zeke Faux, and I believe his book was called Number Go Up. He's amazing. He really nailed the whole industry, I guess figuratively, not literally. And I also interviewed, and now I'm forgetting his name, from the OC, Ben, I'll tell you his name, on the crypto book that he wrote. Someone can tell me. And his book was excellent. Oh, Ben McKenzie. And I don't remember. Easy Money was the name of his book. And I read all 3 books. I also understand, blockchain and crypto, blah, 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 blah. I don't want to get into the weeds. Whenever you talk about crypto, people who don't know much about it feel alienated. But it's not that super complicated to understand. I guess the way people get confused is someone tries to obsess about the back end technology behind what cryptocurrency is. But I think what I would like you to think about cryptocurrency as is just an asset, just a digital asset. The same thing as, have you ever been online and, and put an emoji in a text? Right? It's a digital asset. Think of it that way. It's just something online that has, because other people claim that it has value, because supposedly it is in short supply, people can trade it. So think of it as something that, trading cards. When you were a kid, if you ever had Wacky Pack trading cards, or if you traded baseball cards. Crypto is essentially a collectible. Each one is unique, the same way a trading card, even if it has the same name on it, there's only one piece of paper, right? Everyone is unique. And the only reason why it gets value is because 2 reasons. One, crypto was used and is used in the dark web for people to trade things where they don't want to be traced, things like drugs and trafficking and women and so on, illicit stuff. Secondly, it's being used because people believe that it's going to go up in value, which it has. And so they're investing in it as a commodity in a sense. Now, there are companies that you can buy into an investment fund that invests in crypto assets. Now, this is not the time for me to talk about this, but you remember that Sam Bankman-Fried was indicted because of securities and commodities fraud and for wire fraud in connection with him cheating he had an exchange where you could trade your crypto. And the people who helped him both set up the customers of the exchange were cheated, as well as a separate investment company that he had. And he was unlawfully transferring customer funds into his investment company. That part gets complicated, but basically it's your basic kind of Ponzi scheme situation and fraud scheme, and it's very opaque. Okay, now you may say, but wait, it's called currency. And there are people who promise that cryptocurrency will be used to help people who don't have access to other funds. That's what people always say when they're trying to grift. But the reality is, yes, as I said, you can, in theory, I could take real money, they call it fiat currency. I could take real money from my bank account, right? And I could transfer real money from my bank account into a crypto wallet. That can be done. And there are companies that will help you do that. And then I could buy some Bitcoin or some other kind of coin, right? Yes, there's a way to generate it, but let's say I just wanted to buy $10,000 as if of Bitcoin, right? I could own that in a wallet. What's difficult though, and then maybe I could buy things. What's difficult though is once I own it, getting it back out into the real world. Every time you go in and go out, it costs more money. Also, they say Bitcoin is so sophisticated. It is so much slower than using a credit card or using a debit card. It is not fast. There are huge fees. Also, these businesses, they actually lose money. Some of you may know about, having a money market fund. Like if you own, let's say, mutual funds in an IRA or a 401k, and you're like, well, I have money in this mutual fund and I want to sell it because I have to pay for something. I'm going to buy a car or I have to pay for medical treatment or whatever. And you sell it, often if you're in your, I have a Fidelity brokerage account in which I have an IRA. If I wanted to sell out of, I have invested in Contra Fund, for example. Let's say I wanted to sell $5,000 of my Contra Fund shares because I wanted to put them in my IRA. Now I don't know, what I would do is I would redeem them into a money market fund, which is in theory a stable value of $1. Well, crypto has the same thing, but their so-called stable value funds went broke. Why is it that so many crypto bros are in prison? Ask yourself. Now, I hope that was clear enough to you. Yes, you can use it to buy things, just like you could use anything else in trade to pay for something. People barter all the time. Paying in crypto is a form of barter. It's not real money, but it can be used as a medium of exchange. So the definition of money is usually it's a medium of exchange, it's a store of value, and it's a unit of account. Yes, crypto is a medium of exchange. It's not very good because not everybody takes crypto. At the gas station, they don't take crypto. At the Coke machine at work, they don't take crypto. My doctor's office doesn't take crypto, etc. But, of course, I pay in digital money. I'm sure people use Venmo all the time, right? There are systems when we pay people in a closed system. And as you know, if I pay someone in Venmo, your credit card's attached to that, what happens? You get a charge. Of course, the credit card company takes a fee. And when you want to get your money out of Venmo, there isn't a fee to get it transferred back into your bank account unless you need it in a hurry. Well, crypto is similar, right? Except it's more complicated because the difference is, as I said, it's a medium of exchange, but is it really a store of value? It's very volatile. Crypto goes up and down, right? Is it a unit of account? I don't know. Do most people say, do a balance sheet and say, I have this much value in my house. This is how much my house is worth in crypto? Not most people. Okay, now that has set you up. So Donald Trump does this announcement. And what is this announcement? Okay, I just told you a basic primer on what crypto is, right? It's a thing you can barter for goods and services. It's also something you invest in, the way you might invest in a stock or in a commodity. It goes up in value, down in value, and people, that's why they're investing in it. They don't really care about buying things with it, except as a side benefit. Let's listen to Donald Trump being really intelligent when he's asked on Twitter Spaces last night about his crypto venture. Oh, and before I begin, say more, after we do this, we're going to talk about who is in business with him, right? His son Barron is part of this, but you're never going to believe that pharma bro Martin Shkreli is partnering with them. We'll have more on him after this.
Why is it so important for America to lead in cryptocurrency adoption and innovation?
Well, it's crypto, it's AI, it's so many other things.
AI, speaking of an interesting future, it needs.
AI is not crypto. He doesn't even answer the question. Now, he's not here just because he's talking about what he will do as president. He was always against crypto until he realized that he can make a buck off somebody else in this scam. And so now he's not only for crypto personally, but he wants to get into the White House to deregulate and advance crypto. I think you've heard him talk about how he wants to have the U.S. Treasury invest in crypto. Let's do it.
Tremendous electricity capability beyond anything I've ever heard. It never made sense to me, but this is what it needs. If you take all of the electricity coming out of the U.S., in order to be dominant in AI, you need twice that amount, just for this one thing. Who would think that? You need twice the electricity we already have. And you got to get started. I mean, you have to be, if you're the U.S., you have to get started. Right. You don't want to be left in the dust.
By the way, it's not electricity that you need for AI. As you probably know, cryptocurrency, the part I was telling you about, how some people actually create it, others can just buy or invest in it. These cryptocurrencies, it's like this ridiculous game where you can go mining for it. You remember back in the days of the gold mining where people would go out west and pan for gold? Well, they've created that metaphor. It's like a video game where you can, if you have enough computer servers and you set up your computers to solve puzzles, yes, you guys, this is a real thing, you will be rewarded with cryptocurrency. There are server farms. There are giant warehouses that just have computer servers and are running, using up energy. And I don't say using up, this is creating huge problems in terms of, as you know, electricity gets generated from somewhere. And in doing this, we are, it's helping destroy the planet, right? Because, where I used to live, there was actually still a coal fire plant. But think about what generates electricity and what it is doing in terms of increasing carbon in the U.S. So he's talking about how we need more electricity for AI. Now, as you know, AI is artificial intelligence. Think about ChatGPT and large language learning models. That also, of course, needs server power, but not what he is talking about. Again, he was asked about crypto and he doesn't know anything other than someone told him he could make a buck. Oops. I want to add that back to the stage and keep.
And China's already building electric plants, and they want to build them for the AI, and it's very important. But you need tremendous electric, and in this country, because of our strong environmental impact statement problems that we have, China doesn't have those problems. They don't do them. They just build. They said, build over here, build over there. With us, you have to go through years. But I'll make it possible to create tremendous amounts of electricity very rapidly. But people don't know that. People don't know that you need double the electricity of what we already have. So you want to get in, whether it's crypto or AI or other things that are coming along, and it's part of the game. We want to have a great country. We want to.
It's absolutely stunning what a fool he is. But don't just trust me. Let's listen to Tim O'Brien on Stephanie Ruhle last night, because I want you to hear what experts have to say here. And Tim O'Brien, as you may know, for Business Week, and I think he also at one point worked on the Bloomberg campaign. He's followed Trump for years. I think he writes for, I'm pretty sure, I said Newsweek, but it could be Business Week. Let's listen to him on Stephanie Ruhle and others kind of break down what happened last night when Donald Trump tried to talk about crypto.
Funny, but it's not. Right? Cryptocurrency is exactly where it's a very dark place. There are huge positives and huge unknown negatives.
Well, like everything, around Trump, it's tragicomic because it is funny because it's absurd, and it is funny because it seems on its face to be such a transparent scam. But it's also tragic because Trump is using the public media and the platform that he's on to perpetrate a Carney Act. And by the way, he's running for president. And so
I love that. He's using his platform to perpetrate a Carney Act. Unless for folks who don't recognize the word Carney, Tim O'Brien's referring to people who work at carnivals, right? Who are trying to create a show. Okay. And attract you, to the rides or to the games, throw this ring over a duck and you'll win a prize. And you know what? At the end of the day, you have fun at the carnival, you spend too much money on the kids, but we're talking about bringing down the entire U.S. and world economy because Donald Trump is an idiot and doesn't know what he's talking about and will listen to anyone who will stroke his ego and put money in his pocket.
Someone who, if he wins the election in November, will then hold great regulatory sway over the crypto market. He and his children are putting a crypto product out there in advance of Election Day that they could profit off massively if he becomes president. And he doesn't bat an eyelash at it because it's in keeping with who he's been for decades. He ran a casino. He may be the only person in the casino business who couldn't make money running a casino, but he ran one. And the ethos of a casino is finding effective ways to part fools from their money. And he ran Trump University, and he took advantage of the family's nonprofit. He's run grifts off of anything he can get close to and get a quick hit out of. So it's not surprising that he'd be drawn to crypto, but it's in the context of he's also running for president, so he's besmirching the office.
But that's why this is so much more dangerous than that, right? Trump ice, who's that really going to hurt? The fact that he could be the next president, stand to make a fortune off of crypto, and he'll get to decide who's the next SEC chair, and he's made it clear he wants Gary Gensler to hit the road.
Yeah, Gary Gensler was formerly in finance, and he did such a good job running the CFTC, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, and that he was tapped to be the SEC chair. Wall Street doesn't like him because he knows where the bodies are buried, and Trump will have him hit the road. Now, I mentioned to you that pharma bro Martin Shkreli is the person who had leaked earlier that he was working with Barron Trump on creating a DJT coin, which is now what they're announcing that Barron and, Donnie and Donald Trump are doing this. Now, I thought he was running a media company into the ground, but now he wants to do this. So I want to share with you who this guy, Martin Shkreli, is, in case you've forgotten. So we've got Martin Shkreli is also known as Pharma Bro. This photo that you're looking at here is from a congressional hearing where he was called in to testify on his price gouging related to his former role as founder and president of a company called Retrofin. No, he's not a pharmaceutical genius. He just got some money together in a fund, and bought up some pharmaceutical companies. He's not like a scientist. He's not even, I know Elizabeth Holmes actually seemed to know something or care something about blood draws, but he's even more of a scammer than her. Ultimately, though, let me just tell you, in this hearing, he was on with other people on the panel. And if I recall correctly, Senator Manchin's daughter was also involved in some so-called price gouging. Now, one of the drugs that he had control of was a drug that was, we'll talk about what he did with this, but it was a really important drug, you guys, that was used to cure a parasitical infection known as toxoplasmosis. And anyone who has been pregnant knows that doctors warn you about this. When you're pregnant, you're not supposed to go near cats. You're not going to believe this. This actually involves cats and cat ladies, because sometimes cats can carry with it in their feces, etc., and their, the kitty litter, this disease. And it's very dangerous for a pregnant woman. Now, toxoplasmosis is also not great to get if you're a person who is not pregnant. And what I have heard about and read about toxoplasmosis, I'm going to fill you in a moment. But first, we've got to say more about him. So he was ultimately charged criminally with securities fraud. Okay, he was not criminally charged with price gouging. That's not a thing. He was charged with securities fraud, cheating his investors, because he was a managing partner of this hedge fund that was investing in companies like this. So what happened to him? He was convicted by a jury after only a 5-day, he was only in tech issues. He was convicted by a jury after 5 days of deliberation on 2 counts of securities fraud, 1 count of conspiracy to commit securities fraud, and 5 other counts of conspiracy. And what I want to show you here is that barely an hour after the verdict, before the sentencing, he was live streaming from his YouTube channel in his apartment, and he was holding a beer and predicting that his sentence would be close to nil. He said that if he did go to prison, it would probably be a club fed where he would play baseball and tennis and Xbox for a couple of months. That's what he said in 2017. Now, just so you know, yes, there is, basketball and tennis. Yes, there is basketball and tennis at most facilities that are low security or a medium security. They do not allow you usually to play Xbox, though, so that was not so great. You also might remember that his bail was revoked because he at one point told people, and this was when Hillary Clinton was on the campaign trail in the lead up to the 2020 election, that someone should go to one of her rallies and take one of her hairs off of her head so he could make a voodoo doll out of her. That made his bail get revoked instantly. And yes, he ended up serving time in prison, and they let him out on early release. If I recall correctly, that was in 2022. Now, in addition, though, because we were talking about price gouging in pharmaceuticals, he has also been banned from the pharma industry for life. He was fined $64.6 million. So this was, there were separate civil allegations against him. I think this was civil, not criminal, because it's a Federal Trade Commission. So he was fined $64.6 million in disgorgement, meaning he was supposed to give up the money to help the victims, people who were paying too much for the pharmaceutical drugs that he was price gouging on. This was considered an illegal anti-competitive scheme. Now, the reason why I'm quoting this is from this year, January of 2024. The Federal Trade Commission mentions this because that is when the Second Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed this and said, yes, we're going to uphold this fine. Now, here are some details, and I want to share these with you. It might be too small, but you can always take a screen cap or go back. This is quoting from the FTC. This is, and I'm going to get into the cat lady thing because this is too weird to be life. So the Second Circuit's decision, this is what the Federal Trade Commission said, is a win for consumers seeking affordable, life-saving medication. And it clearly demonstrates that corporate executives will be held personally liable for anti-competitive actions they help to orchestrate. And this is when the FTC said, I want to congratulate FTC staff for their hard work on this case. And I want to thank our state attorneys general partners for their dedication to this important matter. So what was the background here? Again, this is a press release from the Federal Trade Commission leadership from January 2024, 2 years earlier, right? So in January 2022, the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York held that Shkreli had organized an illegal anti-competitive scheme to perpetrate a monopoly for the life-saving drug Daraprim. And this drug was the gold standard treatment for a rare, potentially fatal parasitic infection known as toxoplasmosis. Now, what he had done is he had a scheme that prevented a generic from competing and that allowed him to protect his prices for this drug. And he raised it from $17.50 a tablet, which is already a lot, to $750 a tablet. Okay, that is the kind of person he is. And again, price gouging, just to be clear, on its own might not be a problem, but he was using anti-competitive practices to push out the competition. Now, before I leave this, as noted, toxoplasmosis comes from cats. And I think that there has always been this thing about so-called crazy cat ladies, right? You know, people would say, I'm going to be old and one day I'll just have 1 million cats. And obviously, this has also been picked up pejoratively about, you know, J.D. Vance and others saying all these, you know, these are just single cat ladies. Well, the expression cat lady isn't just a new thing. Crazy cat lady comes from the fact that people who had cats sometimes got toxoplasmosis and other diseases, and it made them not right in the head, apparently. This is what I read when I was pregnant. I have not confirmed it with doctors, but this is what I read. But at any rate, kind of weird that those things come together, and kind of awful that Donald Trump is hooking up with Martin Shkreli and letting his son associate with this person who served a criminal sentence. This is unacceptable. Donald Trump is in it for himself. He wants to get into the White House so he can help deregulate crypto and and also take away environmental protections that will help destroy the planet just so he can make a buck. And how is he doing that? With a convicted felon. This is what we're talking about. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are not weirdos. They are normal people who have not spent time in federal prison for cheating the public. They have not been indicted for any kind of fraud. They are not being charged with trying to overthrow the lawful election. In fact, Kamala Harris has prosecuted people like this. She knows his type, and so do we. Okay, guys, one thing before I get to Crazy Town. I got to share this with you. Actually, I forgot. This is Crazy Town, guys. Crazy Town today, again, is Jill Stein. Jill Stein, the other day, I showed you that she thought there were 600 people in the House of Representatives and Senate combined. Okay? And she's running for president. Well, we have Mehdi Hassan interviewing Jill Stein and asking her, hey, lady, hey, presidential candidate, hey, head of the Green Party, why have you never denounced Vladimir Putin? Why have you not denounced him as a war criminal for what he is doing in Ukraine? And she dodges and she weaves. Let's listen.
We looked at your social media, and you haven't done that many posts specifically calling out Russian attacks on civilian areas. You haven't called Vladimir Putin a war criminal, but you have called Benjamin Netanyahu a war criminal.
No, actually we did.
Yeah.
In my very first remarks about the Ukraine war, we condemned...
Vladimir Putin's a war criminal in your view.
Yes, we did
and Bashar al-Assad's a war criminal.
Yes, in so many words. Yes, we have said as much.
Bashar, I think she's referring to Syria here too. And she keeps saying in so many words. Because it's so hard to have words, right? It's so hard to find a platform, you know, to write words that say Putin is a war criminal. I don't know. There's so many words, but not those words.
So
you called Netanyahu one, which I think he is.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
Is Putin a war criminal?
So what we said about Putin was that his invasion of Ukraine is criminal. It's a criminal and murderous war.
And he's a war criminal who should be on trial.
Well, by implication.
Yes.
Oh, guys, I'm giving you an extra Crazy Town because I didn't play the music. I have one coming up. Here we go. Let's do this, and then I'll do the real one.
Struggling here to say something very simple. This is why people have their doubts about you and Russia.
Well,
why is Benjamin Netanyahu a war criminal but not Vladimir Putin?
Well, as John F. Kennedy said, we must not be afraid to, we must not negotiate out of fear, and we must not fear to negotiate.
What?
So if you want to be an effective world leader, you don't start by name-calling and hurling epithets.
So how will President Stein negotiate with Israel then if you've called Netanyahu a war criminal?
Well, because he very clearly is a war
so Putin
criminal.
Clearly isn't a war criminal.
Well, we don't have a decision, put it this way, by the International Criminal Court.
Yes, we do.
Yes, actually,
actually you're wrong.
Holy shit. Mehdi is going hard. Let's listen. Keep going. She says, well, I can't call Putin a war criminal because then how would I negotiate with him? And Mehdi says, well, you've called Netanyahu an Israel war criminal. How are you going to negotiate with him? Oh, well, he definitely is one. Well, Putin isn't one? She said, well, he hasn't been called one by the International Criminal Court. And he's like, yes, she has. Do not try to win an argument with Mehdi.
Arrest warrant for Putin. There isn't yet an arrest warrant for Netanyahu. So why is Putin not a war criminal, but Netanyahu is?
Yeah.
I think they're both are. You don't.
Let me say this.
Either you're a war criminal or you're not. Is Vladimir Putin a war criminal?
In so many words, yes, he is.
I don't know what so many words are. Butch, is Vladimir Putin a war criminal?
Let me say that whatever you think he is, if you want to pull
it doesn't
him
matter what I
back...
think. I'm asking what you
well,
think. You're running for president.
If you
I'm
are
not.
a world leader, you don't begin your conversation by calling someone a war criminal unless
So why
you
have you called Biden and Netanyahu war criminals?
Because we have a clear...
What is going on? I'm not saying Russia has paid her or has dirt on her or what have you, but it makes absolutely no sense. And it also, what I appreciate with Mehdi here, it also exposes the double standard that people in the Green Party and the far left have. You can call Benjamin Netanyahu a war criminal, and the ICC did. And of course, Sinwar of Hamas was called a war criminal. And there's a warrant out for Putin's arrest, and he is a war criminal, but she can't say that. She can't say that. Why? Why? Okay. Useful idiot? I think so. Now, let us do a real crazy town. I had this too, but I wasn't sure. So guys, I know what happened after Crazy Town. We played it, and you might say, where did Disappear do? Yesterday's Crazy Town. Well, the problem was that was a really good Crazy Town, but the guy who made that fabulous song also owns the copyright, and I didn't get in trouble, but I had to strip the sound out of it. So you can still watch his video, and it was fabulous. And I think some people in the comments from yesterday's YouTube gave you a link so you can watch it from yesterday. Now, I'm also going to play you, something now that, for which the same thing might happen. And because of that, I can't guarantee that when you come to watch Crazy Town for a second time, it will still be here. But I'm going to go for it. I'm going to be bold. And since we've been talking still about cat ladies, whether it be Taylor Swift, or it is the cat ladies that Shkreli did not care about and was gouging for their medical treatment. And at the end of the day, they're getting their money back. It will be, in 50 days, Revenge of the Cat Ladies. We must show up. We must show up for Kamala and Tim Walz. And I know it's less than 50 days. Some of us are voting early by mail-in ballot and in person as soon as September 20th, which is this week. Let's do it. I'll try to dance today. We'll see if it lasts. I love it so much. This is how I'm going to the polls on November 5th. In a cat outfit, I'll find something. Folks, don't bring your cat to vote with you, though. That could create issues. And, guys, and I have an idea for you. You know how you're not supposed to wear t-shirts, campaign t-shirts within a certain number of feet of the polling place? Once that's why you see when you drive into the high school, people standing out at the perimeter by the road and not like by the door, right? People are supposed to be, if you're voting, not influenced. But there's no thing that there's nothing in the world that should prevent you from wearing a cat on a t-shirt. I'm just saying, just don't have it say Kamala. Okay, love you guys. I will see you. I will see you tomorrow morning at 8. Don't forget, we have Nerd Avengers today at noon. Take care. Bye.